up whatever material you want to go in the screen. Now these are quite nice because you can literally just fold them over. It allows you to kind of really place things, and then that's your area that you print into. Now you can do it on fabrics, you can do it on t-shirts. I do it with my kids at school and art club on t-shirts and bags. And I might show you later on a t-shirt just so you can see how you could do that as well. But literally if you've got it and you want to use it, you can then print on it, which is really lovely. So once you've got that kind of set up, the thing that takes probably the most amount of time is actually preparing your stencil. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit complicated. So what you need to do is plan your design first of all. Now if you're doing one colour, easy peasy. Okay, so I'll just show you that and then I'll talk about how the variations within that. What I would suggest is you don't necessarily need to have it this whole great big size. If you want to cut it down and print into a smaller area, I'll show you later how you can kind of stop it going everywhere else you don't want it to go. So what you're doing is planning out your design. I'll keep it very simple to begin with. Keep away from your edges because when you cut, and if you're too close to your edges, it's more likely to seep through. The paint might seep through onto the other bits of the area, particularly if you're painting onto a t-shirt, for example. You don't want it going out onto the bits that you don't really want it to be. So if I just do something ever so simple, and then let's do bits and pieces. So very simple shapes. Now what you want to think about is your positive and negative space. So your positive space is the object that you want to print. That's the colour that's going to come through printed. The negative space is the space around. So the positive is what you're going to cut out probably. Now this is quite simple. Now with the knives, they are quite sharp, so do just be fairly careful of them. I tend to stand up to do it, therefore if I slip I'm less likely to stab myself or anybody else, but it's entirely up to you, but I would recommend standing up. Also fairly obvious I think, but not good. Okay, so just have your stuff up above. Obviously it gets more difficult when you keep it small, so even if you've got a very small design, I tend to do it on a big piece of paper. It gives you a bit more control. Whereas if you've got a tiny little bit of paper and you're trying to, it's just not hope and hell, it's not worth it. Particularly if you're teaching to other people and you're trying to keep hold of about 30 at once. It gives you a better chance of succeeding and less blood, which is always good for my book. So yeah, just coming down here, you need some form of cutting mat. These are really lovely because they take in the knife quite easily. There's no reason why you can't do it on other sort of cardboard or board if you don't have access to something like this. Okay, so keeping the knife fairly straight like you would a pencil. Try not to bend it with these particular knives. Bend it too far, they will snap. Okay, if you feel a bit uncomfortable about doing it, then just give me a shout and I'm more than happy to come over and show you. You don't really need to press very hard at all. Straight line's easy peasy. When you get to the curve, you don't need to kind of go around the corner or literally just turn it around. So you're always cutting in the same direction. It just makes your life easy. If you're literally turning, there's no reason you can keep it in that spot and turn it. And that will make your life nice and easy. Now if you find you've got a really dud blade, we have got some sharp ones, so do just say if you find it's not cutting very easily, and I'll change your blade for you. Now if you really want to experiment, I would keep both bits, and I'll explain kind of how you can experiment with that. So assuming you've got your design, nice and easy, then what you're going to do, this is where you start to set up, and I'll show you both options actually. Placing it underneath the screen where you want it. Keeping it underneath the screen means you're less likely to move it around, and it just makes it nice and easy. Now if, for example, you had a lot of space around the edge, you can actually just use torn up newspaper to mask off the other areas. So if you want that to go in red but you don't want the stencil below to be red, for example, you just cover that up with some newspaper. So if I didn't want this bit to go red, flat bit of newspaper, covering that bit up, and then only that bit's going to print in that colour, and it means that you don't have to worry about medium, which basically means if you use the straight acrylic, it would completely block your screens in a matter of 10 minutes, 5 minutes, if not less than that really, so it's not worth risking really. So this is a medium which allows it to stay wetter for longer. It's also a fabric medium, this specific one, which means that you can print onto t-shirts and things, and then when you're printed you iron them afterwards before you then wash them, and it will keep them from running in the wash, and that you've got them then forever. But it actually works for everything. Now I tend to do 1/3 of this to 2/3 paint. And if you know you're going to be using it for a long time and you're going to be taking quite a long time over it, or you want to use it for a number of ones, I put half and half. So if you've got quite a big group that you're trying to get through and you don't want to have to keep washing the screens, or you haven't got enough screens, half and half it should be fine as well. But 1 to 2/3 is better. Now the beauty of this is you can mix your own colours. So you don't have to be using straight from the pot. So if you wanted to make it a little bit darker and have variations in reds, you can start to be mixing and matching. You don't need a huge amount, and I'll show you so you can kind of see. So using one of the pots, now what I would say is if you know someone else is going to be using a similar yellow, you might say, oh, should we mix double, and then you can use it after me. And that will just keep us from wasting anything. So just whacking in a bit of that.
So, sorry, what was the ratio? 1/3 of
this
the barrel
to
to the...
that. Yeah. And then you need to just make sure you're really mixing that in. There are plenty of spoons and things around. So you want a fair amount. There's no point putting it all the way to the edges, because actually your stuff doesn't go all the way to the edges. It just means you've got to spend hours washing around the edge. It's not worth the hassle in my opinion. So you can start to kind of have a little play with where you want it to. Now you're dragging down from the top, so just remember that it's going to come down, and it's not always completely. I quite like the free-for-all. Now I might go for it. You can't really do it wrong. So, okay, then what you do at the bottom is actually you can pick that up